Be me, 24. I guess I'm what you'd call a feminist. Not the crazy kind, just someone who believes in equality and isn't afraid to call out toxic masculinity when I see it. And I see it a lot. This whole story is about that, really. It's about how guys are, and about one guy who I thought was different. His name was Fred. I knew Fred for years, since college. He was always just there, like a comfortable piece of furniture you don't really notice until it's gone. He was sweet, I guess. That's the word everyone used for him. Oh, Fred, he's so sweet. He was also completely in love with me for about 5 years. It wasn't a secret. He wasn't subtle. He'd text me good morning every single day, without fail. He'd be the first person to like any photo I posted, usually within seconds. If I ever mentioned needing something, he'd offer to get it. He was my go-to guy for everything, my emergency contact for life's little disasters. At the time, I just thought he was being a really, really good friend, the best friend a girl could ask for. This all came to a head a few months ago. I was dating this other guy. We'll call him my boyfriend, because he was. He was the complete opposite of Fred. He was exciting, confident, a little bit dangerous. The kind of guy who walks into a room and everyone notices. He wasn't great at the emotional stuff, though. That was his brand of toxic masculinity, I guess. He couldn't handle it when I was upset. He'd just shut down or get annoyed. So that's where Fred came in. I remember this one night. It must have been like 2 a.m. on a Tuesday or something. My boyfriend and I had a huge fight over nothing. He wanted to go out with his friends. I wanted a quiet night in. He accused me of being controlling. I told him he was emotionally unavailable. Classic stuff. He ended up just leaving, slamming the door behind him. I was a mess, crying, feeling totally alone. My first instinct wasn't to call my girlfriends. It was to call Fred. I knew he'd be asleep, but I also knew he'd answer. And he did, on the second ring. His voice was all groggy. I just started venting. Everything poured out of me. How my boyfriend never listened. How he made me feel small. How all I wanted was to feel valued. Fred just listened. He didn't interrupt. He made all the right noises. Those little and I'm sorry sounds that let you know someone is paying attention. He told me I deserved better. He said I was an amazing person and that my boyfriend was an idiot for not seeing it. He stayed on the phone with me for over an hour until I had cried myself out and felt calm enough to sleep. I remember saying something like, "Thanks, Fred. You're literally the best. I don't know what I'd do without you." Then I hung up and went to bed. It didn't even occur to me to ask how he was, or if I had woken him up from a deep sleep before a big day at work. He was just Fred. He was always okay. This was our dynamic. He was my emotional support system. My boyfriend provided the excitement and the validation of being with someone attractive. Fred provided the actual support. It seemed like a fair system to me at the time. It wasn't just emotional stuff either. He was my personal handyman, tech support, and moving service. A couple of months back, I was getting really involved in this local activist group. We were planning a protest, and I was in charge of making flyers and posters. My stupid old printer decided to die on the most important day. I was panicking. I had a deadline. Of course, I called Fred. He was at work, but he told me he'd come over during his lunch break. He showed up, still in his work clothes, and spent a solid hour on his hands and knees, fiddling with wires and cartridges. I was hovering over him, stressed out, telling him to hurry. While he was working, my boyfriend called. My whole tone changed. I was all sweet and giggly, making plans with him for later that night. I completely forgot Fred was even in the room. He eventually got the printer working. He was covered in a bit of ink and looked tired. I gave him a quick, "Oh my God, you're a lifesaver, thank you," and immediately turned back to my poster design. He just stood there for a second. I think he asked if I wanted to grab a coffee or something later. I barely heard him, just mumbled something about being super busy. He left quietly. I didn't even walk him to the door. Looking back, that was probably a key moment. But at the time, it was just a Tuesday. He was always trying to find little ways to spend more time with me. He'd happen to be in my neighborhood and ask if I wanted to grab lunch. He'd send me links to articles or songs he thought I'd like. It was a constant stream of attention. And I loved it. I won't lie. It was like having a personal fan club. It felt good to be admired so unconditionally. My boyfriend certainly didn't admire me like that. He barely remembered my favorite color. Fred remembered the name of my childhood pet. Of course, there was always the unspoken thing between us. He wanted more. I knew it, he knew it, the whole world knew it. Every few months, he'd get brave and try to test the waters. He'd give me a compliment that was a little too romantic, or he'd hold a hug for a second too long. I had a system for dealing with this. It was a gentle but firm shutdown. I'd say something like, "Aw, Fred, you're such an amazing friend." The key word was friend. It was like a magic spell that put everything back in its proper box. Or I'd use the classic, "I value our friendship too much to ever risk messing it up." It always worked. He'd retreat, look a little hurt, and then a day later, the good morning texts would resume. I saw it as me being kind. I was protecting his feelings by not leading him on. I was being clear about the boundaries. We were friends, the best of friends. In my head, I was doing nothing wrong. I was just being friendly. He was the one choosing to read more into it. My actual friends saw it differently. One of my girlfriends told me straight up that I was using him. She said it was cruel to keep him hanging on like that. I got really defensive. I told her she didn't understand. Fred and I had a special connection. I said she was just looking at it through a patriarchal lens, where men and women can't be just friends without romance being involved. I actually used that argument. I was very proud of it at the time. It shut her up, but it didn't feel right. The truth is, I needed him. I needed his validation. When my boyfriend would ignore my texts for hours, Fred would reply in seconds. When I felt insecure, Fred would list all the reasons why I was incredible. He was a constant source of confidence, a mirror that always reflected a better version of me. And I was terrified of losing that. If I dated him, the dynamic would change. He wouldn't be my worshiper anymore. He'd be my boyfriend. And honestly, I wasn't attracted to him. He was nice. He was safe. He was reliable. Those are all great qualities for a minivan, not for a boyfriend. I wanted the thrill, the challenge. My boyfriend was a challenge. Fred was a sure thing. And nothing is more boring than a sure thing. The breaking point came around my birthday. It was a few months ago, in the fall. I was having a small party at a bar with some friends. My boyfriend was there, and of course, I invited Fred. Fred showed up with a gift. It was perfectly wrapped. Inside was a first edition copy of my favorite book. It must have cost him a fortune. And it was so thoughtful. He remembered me talking about it months ago. I was genuinely touched. I gave him a big hug and, "Thank you, Fred. This is amazing." Then my boyfriend gave me his gift. It was a designer handbag, flashy, expensive, and something I had pointed out in a store window once. It wasn't thoughtful, but it was impressive, and I made a huge deal out of it. I squealed. I kissed him. I showed it off to all my friends. For the rest of the night, the handbag was on the table, a centerpiece. Fred's book was quietly put back in its bag and placed on the floor by my chair. I didn't mean to be cruel. I was just caught up in the moment. But I remember catching Fred's eye from across the table. He wasn't looking at me with his usual adoring puppy dog expression. He just looked tired, empty. He left early, said he had to work in the morning. I barely noticed him go. The next morning, I woke up and checked my phone. No good morning text from Fred. I thought it was weird. It was the first time in years. Maybe his phone died, I thought. I sent him a quick text. "Hey, thanks again for the book. It's perfect. Hope you got home okay." No reply. A few hours later, still nothing. Now I was getting a little annoyed. I went to check his social media to see if he was active. I couldn't find his profile. I searched again. Nothing. It was like he had vanished. I asked one of our mutual friends to check. She said, "Yeah, he's right here. He just posted a story from the gym." That's when the cold feelings started in my stomach. I went back to our text conversation. I tried to send another message. A little notification popped up. Message failed to send. He hadn't just unfriended me. He had blocked me. On everything. My number, all social media platforms, total radio silence. My first reaction wasn't sadness or worry. It was anger. Pure, hot fury. How dare he? After everything I'd done for him. I let him be my friend. I listened to his boring stories about work. I was a constant presence in his life. And he just cuts me off? Without any explanation. It felt like such a childish, passive-aggressive move. It was the definition of toxic male behavior. Can't handle his emotions, so he just runs away. I complained about it to my boyfriend that night. He barely looked up from his phone. He just shrugged and said, "Sounds like the dude was obsessed with you. You're probably better off." That wasn't comforting at all. The silence was deafening. For the first few days, I kept checking my phone, expecting a text from a different number, an email, some kind of apology. Nothing came. It was weird how much his absence affected my daily routine. I'd post a photo and feel a pang of disappointment when his instant like didn't appear. I'd have a bad day at work and instinctively reach for my phone to complain to him, only to remember I couldn't. I had lost my sounding board, my safety net. My life just felt quieter, less validating. I was genuinely baffled. I couldn't understand what I had done to deserve this. From my perspective, I had always been a good friend to him. I never lied to him. I was always clear about my feelings. It wasn't my fault he developed a one-sided crush. This was his problem, not mine, and he was punishing me for it. The anger slowly morphed into a kind of desperate curiosity. I had to know why. I needed the closure. I tried to get information from our mutual friends. They were all weirdly cagey about it. They'd just say things like, "I think he's just focusing on himself right now." One of them let it slip that Fred's best friend had a long talk with him recently. I knew his best friend. He never liked me. He always looked at me like I was some kind of villain. I figured he had poisoned Fred's mind against me, filled his head with nonsense about me using him. It was so unfair. I was being painted as the bad guy in a story where I was just trying to be a good person. A couple of weeks went by. The silence continued. Life went on, but there was a hole where he used to be. My relationship with my boyfriend was getting rockier. Without Fred to absorb all my complaints, I found myself directing more of my frustration at my boyfriend himself. He did not handle it well. Our fights became more frequent. He started staying out later, being more distant. He told me I was too much and too emotional, the exact opposite of what Fred used to say. I felt myself becoming more and more insecure. I started to miss Fred, not just his attention, but him. I missed his stupid jokes. I missed his unwavering support. I missed knowing that no matter what happened, there was at least one person in the world who thought I was perfect. I started to think that maybe I had made a mistake. Maybe I had taken him for granted. The thought was uncomfortable, so I usually pushed it away. It was easier to be angry at him for leaving than to be sad about why he left. It was easier to blame his friend, or male fragility, or anything other than my own actions. So I stayed angry. I nurtured it. I told myself he was the one who had thrown away a perfectly good friendship over a bruised ego. He was the one who couldn't handle rejection. I was the victim. I had to be the victim. Because the alternative was just too painful to consider. The alternative meant that my friend who called me a user was right. It meant that Fred's friend who hated me was right. It meant that deep down, I knew exactly what I was doing the whole time. And that was a thought I just wasn't ready to face. Not yet. The situation with my boyfriend finally imploded about a month after Fred disappeared. It wasn't a dramatic, movie-style breakup. It was worse. It was pathetic. We were supposed to go to a concert. I had been looking forward to it for weeks. An hour before we were supposed to leave, he sent me a text. Not a call, a text. "Hey, can't make it tonight. Feeling sick." I knew he was lying. I could feel it in my gut. I tried calling him. It went straight to voicemail. Later that night, one of my friends sent me a screenshot. It was from another girl's social media story. And there he was, my boyfriend, at a bar, not looking sick at all, with his arm around this other girl. I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't even shock. It was a dull, heavy feeling of confirmation. I had known this was coming. The official breakup text arrived the next morning. "I don't think this is working. I need some space." Standard, cowardly, toxic. I was devastated. But more than that, I was alone. Truly alone for the first time in a long time. My friends were supportive, of course. They brought over ice cream and let me cry. But it wasn't the same. They had their own lives, their own problems. They couldn't provide the 24/7 on-demand emotional support I was used to. Only Fred could do that. And in that moment of pure misery, all I wanted was to talk to him. I wanted him to tell me I was beautiful and smart, and that my ex was a loser who didn't deserve me. I wanted him to rebuild my shattered ego. The anger I had felt towards him evaporated, replaced by a desperate, clawing need. I had to get in touch with him. My number was still blocked. All my main social accounts were blocked, so I stooped lower. I asked a friend if I could borrow her phone for a minute. I found his number and sent him a message from her phone. "Fred, it's Ida. I know you don't want to talk to me, but something terrible happened. I really need my friend right now." I stared at the phone, waiting. The 3 little dots appeared. He was typing. My heart started pounding. He was going to reply. He still cared. Then the dots vanished. No message came through. A minute later, my friend's phone buzzed. It was a text from Fred to her. "Hey, I think Ida has your phone. Please don't let her contact me again." He had seen right through me, and he had shut me down. Coldly. The humiliation was a physical thing. It felt like a hot flush spreading across my whole body. He didn't just reject me. He exposed me to my friend. Now, I was not only heartbroken, but I was also the crazy ex-friend who couldn't take a hint. That should have been the end of it. I should have taken what little dignity I had left and walked away. But I was spiraling. My self-worth had been so tied up in male attention. The thrilling attention from my boyfriend and the steady attention from Fred. Now, both were gone. I felt invisible, worthless, and the only way I could think to fix it was to get one of them back. My ex was a lost cause. He was already posting pictures with his new girl. But Fred had loved me for years. That kind of feeling doesn't just disappear overnight, right? He was just hurt. His ego was bruised. I just needed to find the right way to soothe it. I started to rationalize. Maybe blocking me was his way of getting my attention. Maybe he wanted me to fight for him, to prove that I cared. This is the kind of logic you can only come up with when you're truly desperate. I spent days obsessing over it. I scrolled through old pictures of us. I reread old text conversations. He was always so complimentary, so available. I had held all the power. I couldn't accept that the dynamic had flipped. My brain went into strategy mode. What did he want from me? What was the one thing I had always withheld? The answer was obvious. I had always kept him at arm's length, insisted on being just friends. What if I showed him I was ready for more? It started with a new social media account, a fake one with a generic name and no profile picture. It felt pathetic, but I was past caring. I found his profile. He hadn't blocked this new account, of course. I could see everything, and what I saw made my stomach twist. He looked happy. He was posting pictures from the gym. He looked like he had gained some muscle. There were photos of him out with friends, including that best friend of his who I hated. They were all laughing. He had gotten a promotion at work. He was building a new life, a life that didn't have a single trace of me in it. He seemed better off without me. This was the ultimate insult. I hadn't just been a source of pain for him. I had been holding him back, and now he was thriving. I saw him tagged in a photo with a girl. She wasn't a model. She was just normal, pretty, in a quiet way. They were standing next to each other in a group photo, but he was leaning slightly towards her. Jealousy hit me so hard it felt like being punched. It wasn't that I wanted him. I still didn't. But I didn't want anyone else to have him. He was supposed to be mine, my admirer, my backup plan, my possession. That's when I made my final, terrible decision. I decided to go nuclear. I convinced myself that this was what he secretly wanted. He had put me on a pedestal for so long. All I had to do was step off it for him. I was at home one night, feeling particularly low. I'd had a couple glasses of wine. I opened the new account and went to his DMs. I took a deep breath, and I sent him a message. I miss you. Then I did it. I took a couple of photos. They were suggestive. Nothing explicit, but there was no mistaking the intent. I looked good. I knew I did. This was my trump card, the ace up my sleeve. For 5 years, he had wanted this version of me, the version that wasn't just his friend. I was finally giving it to him. I attached the photos to the message and wrote a caption. I was stupid. I've been thinking about you a lot. Maybe we could talk? I hit send, and then I waited. The confidence I felt from the wine started to fade, replaced by a nervous energy. I imagined his reaction. He'd be shocked, then thrilled. He would probably text me back instantly, all caps, overcome with joy. He'd see that I had finally chosen him, that he had won. That's what this was, right? A game. And he had finally won. I checked my phone every 30 seconds. Minutes turned into an hour. The scene receipt appeared. He had opened it. He had seen the pictures. My heart was hammering in my chest. Come on, Fred. Just reply. Just give me something. Another hour passed. The silence was agonizing. Maybe he was just trying to play it cool? Trying to give me a taste of my own medicine? I couldn't take it anymore. I sent another message. Almost immediately, the typing bubble appeared. This was it. I held my breath. The message that came through wasn't what I expected. It wasn't angry. It wasn't excited. It wasn't even emotional. It was 2 sentences. Cold, simple, and utterly devastating. I'm seeing someone now. Please don't contact me again. I read it once, then twice. It didn't make sense. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. I was offering him everything he had ever wanted, and he was turning me down? For who? That normal girl from the photo? I started typing a frantic reply. But Fred, it's me. I'm finally ready. We're supposed to be together. I tried to hit send, but it wouldn't go through. A message popped up. You can no longer send messages to this person. He had blocked me again, instantly, without waiting for my response. I just sat there staring at my phone, at my own desperate messages, at my own pictures, which now just looked cheap and pathetic. The full weight of what I had done crashed down on me. I hadn't just been rejected. I had humiliated myself in the most profound way possible. I had offered up my body and my love like a clearance item at a closing sale. And he had looked at it, decided it wasn't worth anything, and walked away. The man I had considered my safe, reliable, always available backup option didn't want me anymore. Not as a friend, not as a girlfriend, not even as a casual hookup. He didn't want me at all. And in that moment, I realized the truth. He wasn't the toxic one. His friend wasn't the toxic one. I was. I was the user, the manipulator, the one who saw people as resources to be exploited. Fred hadn't just been my friend, he had been my emotional crutch. And when he finally learned to walk on his own, I tried to break his legs to keep him next to me. He didn't run away because he was weak. He left because he was strong. Stronger than I ever gave him credit for. Strong enough to choose his own happiness over my comfort. I'm still blocked on everything. I see him sometimes through mutual friends' stories. He and that girl are official now. They look happy, genuinely happy. And me? I'm alone. My ex is a distant memory. My friends are wary of me, and my safety net is gone forever. I have all this silence now, all this time to think, and all I can think about is that book he gave me for my birthday. The thoughtful, perfect gift I tossed aside for something shiny and expensive. I still have it. It's on my bookshelf. Sometimes I just look at it and I feel nothing. Just a quiet, empty space where a good man used to be.